So Russell's here today, and what are we talking about?
People always accuse us of doing nothing but picking on Christianity, but when I review my last 3 shows, I realize I haven't done any of that. Let's see, 3 months ago I did financial scams, and I barely even pretended it was directly related to religion. Don did a great follow-up of that, I think it was last week.
Yeah.
Where he did relate it to religion, but I didn't. And then for the last, and then 1 month we were doing Foolish Atheists, where we were picking on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we did Objectivists, which got all kinds of attention, and not all the good kind on the blog. But I'm tired of not picking on Christianity. And I'm ready I'm ready to go back to a particularly scary group called the Dominionists. Now, I looked back through the archives and I found that there had been a show done about that already by Jeff and Ashley, I believe. It was about 3 years ago, and I kept meaning to listen to that show and make sure I wasn't retreading the same ground, but I didn't really get around to it. So I can't promise that for people who've been listening for years and years and years, this is all going to be new information. The reason that the topic was on my mind, and you know, this is Schilling's favorite topic, there was some article recently in the Daily Kos that alleged that the new vice presidential Republican candidate, Sarah Palin, might have some ties to Dominionism. We mentioned that on the nonprofits, and Matt, you kind of urged caution, and I think at this point I agree that it's better to be cautious, because basically the way the left-wing smearmonger site, as Bill O'Reilly put it, Daily Kos, wrote that basically she was a member of this Alaskan church, and this Alaskan church invited some speaker to come one time, and the speaker had close ties to Joel's Army, which is a Dominionist group.
Yeah.
That's way too tenuous for me. I mean, if I was responsible for every person who ever spoke at the ACA, then and everyone they know, then I don't think I'd come out looking very good.
No, and it's unfair. I mean, granted, you're known by the company you keep, the associations you have, and you know. But I don't want to come out and say this person necessarily believes this unless they've specifically said it.
Yeah.
I have suspicions about what each of the candidates for president and vice president, what their actual beliefs are with regard to religion and kind of apocalyptic views.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right, but we'll pretend like it was the right word.
Yeah.
Apocalyptic views, but
apocalypto.
Yeah, and I have concerns. I have concerns about all of them with regard to their positions on church-state separation and where they think the line should be drawn. That's a big concern. And by the way, as a nonprofit,
when it comes to Dominionists, the line is like I'm not sure what metaphor to use, but the line is like off of the grid. I mean, there is no actual line.
So the one thing we're doing is, you know, we're not, we'd never endorse a particular candidate or party or anything along those lines, but we are allowed to talk about issues, and we are allowed to address, you know, statements and comments and positions of different candidates. But I think we're going to mostly stay away from candidates entirely today and focus on.
Yeah, I would never uncritically pass on the rumor that Sarah Palin is a Dominionist, but consider it critically passed on. And it's a rumor. Actually, let's see. I put a blog post up citing a few links for the show today, and I've already got one comment, which I guess I'll read. Britt says, "Thank you so much for talking about this topic again, although it has been a couple of years since it was last done. Dominionism is a very big problem that people have just started to wake up to. I can't wait until I watch the show. I hope that you guys touch on the parallel economy aspect of Dominionism." Sorry, I have no idea what that is, and I couldn't read up on it 2 minutes before the show started. But I'm sure it's very interesting, so go to the blog and have a discussion on it. That's atheistcommunity.blogspot.com. Anyway, Dominionism, what is it? Dominionism describes in several ways, for being forthright with the information here, the first source I go to is always Wikipedia, and you librarians can gripe at me about that, but I'm still using it for a basic overview. Dominionism describes in several distinct ways a tendency among some conservative, politically active Christians, especially in the United States of America, to seek influence or control over secular civil government through political action, aiming either at a nation governed by Christians or a nation governed by a conservative Christian understanding of biblical law. Now, you might think that these people are connected to another really scary group of Christians that you hear about all the time, which is the people who are waiting for the rapture. The Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye disciples who think that it's only a matter of time before this final horrible cataclysmic battle happens with the Antichrist, and all the Christians are raptured. That's not these guys. In fact, some way, these guys are the opposite. There's a distinction to be made here between premillennialism and postmillennialism. Premillennialism in Christian eschatology is the belief that Christ will literally reign on earth for 1,000 years at his second coming. The doctrine is called premillennialism because it views the current age as prior to Christ's kingdom. It is distinct from other forms of Christian eschatology, such as amillennialism or postmillennialism, which view the millennial rule as either figurative and non-temporal or as occurring prior to the second coming. Premillennialism is largely based on a literal interpretation of Revelation 20:1 through 6 in the New Testament, which describes Christ coming to the earth and subsequent reign at the end of an apocalyptic period of tribulation. It views this future age as a time of fulfillment for the prophetic hope of God's people as given in the Old Testament. Now, on the other hand, postmillennialism is an interpretation of chapter 20 of the book of Revelation, which sees Christ's second coming as occurring after the millennium, or era of Christian prosperity and dominance. The term subsumes several similar views of the end times and stands in contrast to premillennialism and, to a lesser extent, amillennialism. Okay, what does that mean? Dominionists, and I'm not getting to Reconstructionists yet because that's actually a specific subcategory of Dominionists. Dominionists are, let's see, which one is it? Help.
Well, I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with the distinction.
They're post-millennial.
I don't necessarily know that that's actually accurate either.
Okay.
Because the rapture, premillennialism and postmillennialism address the belief about when a rapture is going to occur.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that regardless of when you think that the rapture is going to occur, the Dominionists think the rapture is going to occur. They are still advocating end times apocalyptic scenarios,
yes.
And so this preservation, this building of a Christian nation, the protection of Israel, the encouragement of scenarios that might lead to that ultimate conflict in order to usher in that millennial age, they're on board with that.
But see, here's the difference. The Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye loonies think that the rapture is going to happen right away, and then there's going to be this horrible period of dealing with the Antichrist. Whereas the Dominionists think that it's their job right now, their first priority is to basically run the government because before the big battle happens, Christ is going to come down. There's going to be like a Christ kingdom on earth for a while.
Right.
That's not what the Left Behind guys are saying.
No, the Left Behind guys include that as well.
Okay.
There's a difference. the difference between premillennialism and postmillennialism is where you place the rapture. As Jesus is going to come spirit you away right away, and then there's this 1,000 years of, well, actually, there's tribulation and then 1,000 years of Christ's rule. Or if your rapturing is going to come after that. But all of them want to usher in the end times, because that means that we're all closer to getting home to Jesus.
Right, but the Dominionists think that Christ's kingdom is going to be here on earth. Yes?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, let's actually get to the...
Okay.
Okay. Well, the thing is, Dominionism is kind of an umbrella term anyway. There are a whole lot of
It's
different
not like there's
groups.
we're the Dominionists. It's not like that.
Right. And it's got kind of a negative connotation, and part of the reason that it's got such a bad reputation is it's actually one of the, I think the most prominent subgroup of Dominionists is called the Christian Reconstructionists. And I'm more interested in talking specifically about Reconstructionism because they're the funnier, creepier group of Dominionists. So there is, let's see, there's an article, hold on, I'm very organized. Okay, it's the Creed of Christian Reconstructionism. This is from an actual Christian Reconstructionist group, and it defines what a Reconstructionist is. A Christian Reconstructionist is a Calvinist. He holds to historic Orthodox Catholic Christianity and great Reformed concessions, and Calvinists also believe in predestination, yada, yada, yada. A Christian Reconstructionist is a theonomist. Theonomy means God's law. A Christian Reconstructionist believes God's law is found in the Bible. It has not been abolished as a standard of righteousness. It no longer accuses the Christian, since Christ bore its penalty on the cross for him, but the law is a description of God's righteous character. A Christian Reconstructionist is a presuppositionalist. He does not try to prove that God exists or that the Bible is true. He holds to the faith because the Bible says so, not because he can prove it. So this is actually sort of distinct from evangelists who try to make arguments to convince you that the Bible is right. These guys don't even pretend that they've got logical reasons behind what they think. They just say, you know, this is a matter of faith, and you have to believe it anyway. A Christian Reconstructionist is a postmillennialist. He believes Christ will return to earth only after the Holy Spirit has empowered the church to advance Christ's kingdom in time and history. He has faith that God's purpose to bring all nations, though not every individual, in subjection to Christ cannot fail. And finally, the Christian Reconstructionist is a Dominionist. He takes seriously the Bible's commands to the godly to take dominion in the earth. This is the goal of the gospel and the Great Commission. The Christian Reconstructionist believes the earth and all its fullness is the Lord's, that every area dominated by sin must be reconstructed in terms of the Bible. This includes first the individual, second the family, third the church, and fourth the wider society, including the state. And I'm gonna talk about contrasts here a little more. There are a lot of there are a lot of Christians who believe that they should have influence in the government, but also at least regard democracy as a good thing. Think that America and its system of government was sort of ordained by God. We're the best country in the world. Go us, woo! And they at least pay lip service to the idea that they want to influence the government, but Dominionists actually think, or at least Reconstructionists actually think that the government we have is destined to be replaced by a new biblical law. And we'll get into what that means in a minute. You got something to say?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I want to give an example of a Reconstructionist who was prominent a few years ago, and I want to mention that Christian Reconstructionism was basically founded by R.J. Rushdoony in 1973, and in addition to having a hilarious name and starting the being credited as sort of the founder of Christian Reconstructionism, I also found out at just about the last minute that he's also credited with having being majorly influential in creating the modern homeschooling movement. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to take that opportunity to make a quick swipe at one of our other favorite targets.
Nice.
So Reconstructionism and homeschooling, founded by the same guy. I mean, the current modern form of homeschooling in the U.S. Okay. Let me talk for a minute about my favorite disciple of R.J. Rushdoony, which is his son-in-law. And let me start out by reading something he wrote that may sound familiar if you have a long memory. The year 2000 problem, the year the earth stands still. We've got a problem. It may be the biggest problem that the modern world has ever faced. I think it is. At 12 midnight on January 1st, 2000, a Saturday morning, most of the world's mainframe computers will either shut down or begin spewing out bad data. Most of the world's desktop computers will also start spewing out bad data. Tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions of pre-programmed computer chips will begin to shut down the systems they automatically control. This will create a nightmare for every area of life in every region of the industrialized world. It's called the year 2000 problem. It's also called the Millennium Bug, Y2K, and the Millennium Time Bomb. The bomb isn't going away. Think of what happens if the following areas go down and stay down for months or even years. Banks, railroads, public utilities, telephone lines, military communications, and financial markets. What about Social Security and Medicare? If Social Security and Medicare go down, it will affect millions of people, yet both programs are at risk. Months before January 1st, 2000, the world's stock markets will have crashed. Who is going to leave his money in his bank if he thinks his bank's computer is not reliable? A worldwide run on the banks will create havoc in the investment markets. People who have placed their retirement hopes in stocks and mutual funds will see their dreams vanish. How reliable will stocks and mutual funds be if the banking system has closed down? How will you even get paid? How will your employer get paid? How will governments get paid? Hey Matt, remember when all that happened?
I might have been asleep that day. It got better.
Yeah, there was like horrible Armageddon for a couple of minutes, and then it just went away.
Oh,
weirdest thing.
Oh, no, actually there wasn't. Not even for a couple of minutes.
No.
It's like this threat of an asteroid's going to collide with the planet, and and it just misses. Whoops.
That's amazing how that happened. The guy that I was just quoting was Gary North, who happens to be R.J. Rushdoony's son-in-law, and presented himself as this very unbiased observer who's a hard-eyed realist. Excuse me. Who was just trying to warn people of the impending doom. And there's this very amusing article in Wired magazine on January 5th of 2000, which I've linked from the blog, saying, after a relatively smooth transition to 2000, North finds himself in the somewhat uncomfortable position of having to retract his doomsday predictions. I am certainly willing to say that my assessment of the threat as things have played out was incorrect, North wrote in a statement published Wednesday on his website.
Well, good for him.
Yes, good for him.
I mean, there are plenty of other, there are plenty of other doomsday predictions that are taking place, especially with regard to the rapture / tribulation / millennialism thing, where the end of the world is coming. Are you ready for the rapture? And then people will give a date, and it's coming now. And when they're wrong, I don't normally see a statement saying, obviously I was wrong. But what we end up seeing is, I might have made a mistake here, but the new rapture date is,
Well,
and they start pushing. Oh, did he do that too?
well, actually, I looked real hard for new rapture, new end of the world predictions, and I have to give him credit for not. I couldn't stomach reading his website for very long, but it doesn't seem to me like he's a prominent person who's saying the world's ending right now.
I have some dates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 1844, William Miller predicted Christ would return between March 21st and 1843 and March 21st, 1844. So you have like a whole year span, which is actually pretty good because.
By the way, you have the phone number.
yeah. During it, by the way, the phone number's up. You can call in and talk about this or other things. That's a good kind of thing. But he revised his predictions, claiming to have miscalculated to October 22nd, and that's where the Advent movement, the Seventh-day Adventists, came from. 1977, William Brannan prophesied the rapture would take place then. Chuck Smith thought it was 81. Edgar Weisnett published a book, 88 Reasons Why the Rapture is in 1988. 1989, publication of The Final Shout by the same guy. So he published 88 Reasons Why the Rapture was in 88. 89, he didn't give 89 reasons. He just called it The Final Shout, Rapture Report 1989.
Maybe he just had to give one more reason.
Well, evidently even more, because he also called it for 92, 95, and other years. A Korean group predicted it in 2, 93, 7 years before the millennium. There were a number of predictions about 2000. John Hinkle predicted June 9th, 1994. But now there are some that are for the future. Harold Camping's revised prediction has May 20... Revised. Good for you, right, Harold? May 21st, 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
That can't be it, because the real end is when the Mayan calendar runs out.
I thought the real end was if you look at the Great Pyramid, you can calculate dates, and there's markers, and they coincide with really strong points in history, and then they end in this bottomless pit. And I thought it was like May 5th, 2005. So we might have passed that.
Yeah.
So the Egyptians might have got it wrong too. Sir Isaac Newton proposed, based on his calculations using figures from the Book of Daniel, that the rapture could happen no earlier than 2060.
Oh.
Now here's a genius.
That's good.
I'm going to make a prediction that can't possibly be wrong until way after I'm dead.
Well, even then it can't be wrong, because if it never comes, then his statement is literally accurate.
It couldn't happen earlier than 2060. Might happen afterwards. He's right on the money. He'll never be proven wrong. Isaac Newton was a genius.
Yes. The article in Wired then went on to say, though, that Gary North has made a living predicting that modern society will end in panic and ruin. During the 80s, he advised people to stockpile gold because he saw a nuclear war coming with the Soviet Union. And around the same time, he predicted an AIDS epidemic that would overwhelm the world's hospitals.
We should probably take that one.
Okay.